Okay, tonight I would like to talk to you specifically about the actual title of my talk. My title is Can I Be Individual on My Own? And I took it from the really good series that we had this year called Dairy Girls. There's two scenes from that particular program that I want to talk about. One is when Erin talks to her mother and expresses that she actually wants to be individual this year and not actually wear her blazer. Her mother's response is, "Jerry, get the wooden spoon." So Erin goes down to meet her friend Claire, and Claire goes, why are you wearing your blazer? I thought we were going to be individual this year. And Erin goes, I wanted to be, but my mommy wouldn't let me. Where Claire responds, I don't want to be individual on my own. So what I'd like to use this as beyond the borders tonight, the border I want you to look beyond, is I want you to think about Mammy's response as society's response to difference. And I'd also like you to think about Claire's response as what it is like to be different in society. I do not want to be individual on my own. The individual solution I would like to talk to you about tonight is that what you would normally think of as mental illness. But tonight I'm going to ask you to think about it from a very different perspective, not from the place of illness, but actually from the place of, is this some individual solution to cope with the world we now live in? Now, you might ask, what does she mean? What is the solution? What is an individual solution? What I'm talking about is that every single person sitting in this audience tonight, we have all found our way in the world. Some of us, we're born and we think we're going to grow up, we're going to go to school, we're going to get married, maybe we'll have a car, maybe we'll be really successful, become mothers, become fathers. And they're the ideals that society creates for us. And then sometimes in all of those particular movements in life, we'll find ourselves in places where maybe we slightly have to adjust where we once thought we were. So maybe we're confronted with some anxieties when we become teenagers, when we go to college, all of that. And basically at that moment, we find our solution. So for some of us, overworking and being involved in work is a solution. For some of us, art is a solution. For some of us, it can be alcohol, it can be spending, it can be anything. We all find our own way. But there are also other people who find different ways. They don't necessarily share the same ideals as us in the same way. They have just found another way. And I suppose when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about the time that we now live in these days. We live in a time where if we're different in any way, there's a label. We're categorized in every way. Our children are categorized these days. And I suppose I would like us to challenge that today. And I'd like to think about, for example, one of the things I would have put within my abstract was voice hearing. Now, an awful lot of people will think of voice hearing and hallucinations and delusions as symptoms of psychosis, as symptoms of mental illness. And I suppose I've been very lucky to walk alongside an awful lot of people who have that experience. And that person will speak to you. Many individuals who voice hear will actually speak to you about the fact that that's actually their response to something. For some, it's a response to trauma. For some, it's actually a spiritual experience. But many actually speak of the voices as their particular way of connecting with the world. It's my friend, it's my guide. Sometimes this person supports me, this voice. But there are times that it isn't very useful for some people. And even then, the individual will speak about how difficult it is when that voice actually goes, even though it's difficult, because that is the way that they have found their way to be in the world. I suppose what I would say in regards to that, we automatically think there's something wrong there. We need to fix it. What about the person who's talking to themselves as they're walking down the road? Now, I'll say I talk to myself quite a lot walking down the road, but there are certain things, and what happens to us as human beings when we see that, when we're confronted with something that's different? It presents us with, this is foreign, this is outside of me. And what I'm trying to say to you today is, it's not, actually. It's just a different way. That is the difference. Now, I suppose what I would also like to say is, at this moment in time, we have many, many campaigns that are going on. They're very, very useful. But an awful lot of them are kind of focusing very much on, these are the things that we need to do to stay well. These are the things that are really important for us as human beings. But what's really important is that's very universal. And what's really important is we're not all the same. We all find our own individual way to be in the world. And this is someone's way. And how is it as communities are we actually supporting that? One of the biggest myths, I think, that we have in society is that we all need people. We all need to socialise. We all need to engage. And I suppose I'd like to challenge that tonight, because I think for some people, it can be as traumatic to be with people as it is for some of us to be without people. So that would be something, how I would speak to you about what it was like for Claire to acknowledge something of difference. Now, when we think about even tonight, when we're here and we're talking about Beyond Borders, and we ourselves talk about Donegal, up here, we do it differently. Maybe that's how we find our way in Donegal to get beyond, and that's our individual solution. The second part of my talk I'd like to talk about is the community and Mammy Mary's response. As I said, we have many, many campaigns going on at the moment. Very, very useful, very important for us to talk. But yes, as human beings, we're still here. We're still in distress at times. And what's really, really important, and this, I suppose, is the piece that I think is essential for every one of us to think of. For as long as we have communities, and when I say communities, I mean everything within that community, systems, individuals, towns, there needs to be something that supports something that is different, somebody that chooses a different way. At the moment, within all of our services, and I work within a service that struggles to meet the demands sometimes of the distress of human beings today. And automatically, what are we going to do? We need to do something. We need to fix somebody. And fundamentally, a lot of the things that possibly we may be looking at is trying to create the normal person, trying to make somebody fit into absolutely everything that we think is normal, fit into our ideals. And I suppose what I would say to you today, when we were talking about voices and we were talking about, things like that, we call them delusions. But would you not say the absolute delusion is that there is absolute normality, that there is one truly normal person? Because of all of these campaigns, and that a lot of people talk about, in the old days, we didn't support people who experienced distress in our society. We put them into institutions, all of those kind of things. And I suppose what's really, really important is that there were moments in those institutions where people found a way to be, found their own, something of their own particularity. They were able to be supported there. It wasn't necessarily changed. But equally, I would say, in our towns, we support a difference a lot better than we do right now. One of the biggest examples I wanted to talk about was this famous person. I don't know if you've ever met her in her time, was Mary. Mary was a lady who danced in O'Connell Street in Dublin for 20 years. She used to dance in O'Connell Street for about five hours a day. There isn't anybody who was there who didn't know her. And she sang and she danced with the Virgin Mary. And Mary believed that every day she danced with the Virgin Mary, that in fact the world was a better place. Her world was a better place. And that was her solution, and we embraced it. How many times have we spoke about people in our communities? He suffers with his nerves. He marches to his own tune. But we allowed it. We allowed that person to walk down the road and sing. We allowed that person to shout in the corners. But at this moment, are we doing that? Are we allowing that? And how do we do that? How do we support that? And I suppose what I was trying to do is think of an example that could really make you think of something that is really unusual and would challenge us all as individuals within a community, but actually can be very effective. So I decided to talk to you about the movie Lars and the Real Girl, which is one of the best movies, and I'd really encourage you to see it. It's about a young man that when his mother died, he became so depressed, and his father was depressed, but he was so depressed that he shut himself inside the house. He didn't engage with his family, his brother. He didn't engage with anybody. Anytime anybody seen him, he was shuffling, and he wouldn't look up. Now, Lars's brother invited him to dinner one night, and he said, I'm going to bring a friend. So his brother was really excited that Lars had engaged and found a friend. And Lars arrived with an adult doll. Now, we normally associate adult dolls with other things, but for Lars, this was Bianca, his girlfriend. And he sat and he spoke with her as his brother looked on in horror. But what was interesting within the film and within the community, everybody looked in horror, but they decided to embrace his solution, what it was that he invented. And Bianca became part of everyday life, and bit by bit, he was able to begin to engage with people outside. Now, could you imagine today in Stranorla or Ballybofey if somebody rocked up with an adult doll? We'd have a huge question. But fundamentally, what ended up at the end of that movie was that Lars was actually able to communicate with a female who was not an adult doll. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's always the solution. There's always a happy ever after. But what I'm saying is let's embrace the really unusual solutions. Let's embrace the person who wants to go to a Quaker church and has never been a Quaker. Let's embrace all of those things. And I suppose I'm also very conscious that what I'm saying is to support an individual solution doesn't mean that we don't support them within services or anything like that. But what's fundamental is that we are not trying to make people fit into our ideals, that what we're trying to do is to allow the person to look at the ideals and how that matches his or her particular way of being. Now, I suppose what I really thought about when I came up here is that basically for us, we always say up here, we do it differently. So tonight, what I'd like to say to Cheer Connell, the Twin Towns, is do we? Thank you.